Go ahead, Chris.
So Donnie,
Yeah.
that was a rough one against Eastern Michigan. The inability to stop the run. What did you, when you looked back at it, what did you think? It seemed like you guys didn't make a ton of adjustments with your alignments and stuff up front.
Well, first of all, you're right. It was a rough game. I went in the game thinking, like I told you guys, some of the things we had to do was stop the run, number one. We didn't do that. And when you talk about some adjustments, you're right. We had a system that we should have been one guy available on the backside, and that guy didn't read it very well at times. And then at times they just blocked us and got down the field. When you look at the overall picture of the game, from where my perspective was, they were more physical. Let's just be honest. They were more physical. The quarterback, who we talked about a little bit, trying to make him have a bad day, that didn't happen either. Some people want to talk about were we prepared. I do believe we were prepared. That wasn't the biggest issue for me. The biggest issue for me became missed tackles, not being physical, and just as a team, as a unit, as a football unit on defense, we didn't play well.
So when you get out physical, as you say, what's your perspective on that from a coaching standpoint?
Well, it's usually a one-on-one battle, and you got to try to win them. As far as the double teams as they ran the ball inside, you got 600 pounds on 300 pounds, so you expect you'd like to be able to win some of them. You're not going to win them all. There was times where we just got knocked right and left, and from my perspective, it wasn't a very good game. I'm just going to tell you, keep it as honest as I can with you guys, and be, I've always tried to be upfront, what you guys call it 100, so that's just how it was.
Coach Michael Carasino, Sideline Sports. And to kind of piggyback off that, I know you're talking about the offensive line. I mean, just looking at the raw offensive line, talked about it early last week, but 6'4", 312, basically the average of that line. You're saying some things on the backside. Did you feel, obviously, the success you said they had running the ball, but it was just kind of harder to keep more defensive linemen fresh as the game went on?
Well, it wears on you that way, too. But I think the other thing that happened is we lost Omar. When you lose Omar, and then all of a sudden, you'd like to say one of your more dominant defensive linemen as far as penetration and getting off blocks. And you'd like to say, he is that guy that you try to depend on a lot. But once we lost him, then we found ourselves rotating guys. And, when you start to rotating guys and they haven't had a lot of reps, so to speak, it becomes a win for the other team.
And then to kind of piggyback off that, obviously everybody says football is a copycat sport. Now that's on
No doubt
film,
about that.
Teams are going to try and run more, not asking you to obviously give away game plans,
no.
but what do you do to combat that?
Well, it's like I told the guys. I mean, you're absolutely right. Once you put that on tape, people are going to see it. So, when you start getting your tail beat a little bit, you got to turn to something. What is that? And I always talk about technique. Understanding that you're getting double team and understanding what your leverage is and trying to fight one guy and not trying to fight two and not trying to spin out of gaps, those type of things. But just like you said, once it's on tape, it's on tape. Now, it's up to us now to figure out how we're going to play the double teams a little bit better. Backers get over the top, safeties come up and force. It's a team sport now. If it gets past the first line, you gotta have backers there. If it gets past them, you gotta have DBs. Once that happens, it's in the end zone. So, and that's what I said to them yesterday. This is for us. It's going to be a challenge, and it's going to be a challenge the rest of the year. This is not just one game. We will be challenged in the run game from here on out. That's what's going to happen.
Hey, Coach, Jack Loader, Devil's Digest. Obviously, a really chaotic last 48 hours or so. What was the events of Sunday like for you?
Give it to me a little bit deeper. I know you're asking
The
something.
team
but
meeting, the coaching change, what was that like from your perspective?
far as the coaching change, Herm and I go way back. 40 years. When you think about that guy right there, you always think about a gentleman, talking about Herm. He's always been up front. He's never been one of those guys that he's always been complimentary to everything. So when that happened, you take a back seat and you look at, hey, we didn't do enough to save this man's job, bottom line. And that's how I look at it, is we have to play better if we wanted that guy to stay here, because, he didn't play a snap. I don't play a snap, but at the same time, when you're in the leadership position, things happen. When Ray came in and talked and introduced Sean, couldn't have been a better person to have the job. Guy's been a local guy here for, 10, 12 years at the high school, well-deserved, everybody well-respected within the community, has been a head coach, has an idea of how he wants to run it. So like I told the coaches and I told the players, hey, it's time for us to jump on his back, make sure we're supportive to him, and everything that's in the past, you got to figure out how to let it go and move on.
Donnie, Nick King from Channel 3, Channel 5. I understand that would be probably emotional for you here, probably even tougher or maybe on a different level, but for the players, for 18 to 22-year-olds going through a coaching change. How do you help them navigate it?
Well, here's what we talked about was, because I believe this. I believe you're going to have at least 3 crises a year, and I believe this is one of them. And I learned from a guy by the name of Bruce Snyder, his 3 methods of how you do things. And like I told the players, the first thing is to acknowledge it. Okay, you have to acknowledge what just happened, and it's up to you to share it. And once you acknowledge it, then you can mourn. And you can mourn as long as you want. That's the second part of it. No one can tell you how to mourn. No one can tell you how long to mourn. But the final part of the 3 ideas of how you handle it is, at some point, you got to get back to what was important before it happened. And that's how I tried to explain to the players. That's how I'm trying to handle it. And that was the way I related it to the players.
Coach Luke Liddon here with 12 Sports. Kind of piggybacking off of that, how did you feel practice was today? Did you feel a different energy, different vibe ever since the news? Kind of walk us through what that felt like.
You know how change is. Change is different. And it was a lot of energy. And it was different practice. It was an upbeat practice where the players found themselves doing things they hadn't done in years. Example was, there will be no walking anywhere. And now you got guys that's starting to walk and you're running behind them. You got to go. And they're looking and they're like, wow. And so the tempo was speeded up a little bit today. The other thing is we found ourselves being a little bit more physical. Someone asked about the physicality, about how you're going to do things and make it better. So we did find out today was a little bit more physical because we challenged the offense, the scout team, to go ahead and kick our tail, so to speak. Come off the ball and kick our tail. And if you guys are kicking our tail, then we better make some adjustments. So that part was pretty good. You got one? Go ahead, Craig.
For you guys, and I've been in that seat where head coaches can let go. You guys, your future's unknown now too. How do you navigate that?
I think you take it one day at a time. I mean, you got to live in the present. If you start looking down the future, all you can do is speculate when you look down the future. And I personally, I've been around a long time, obviously. I'm right here in the present today. And as I told my family and, everybody speculates on where you're going to be, I told them, like I told them, we're here today. And if you can make today a better day for yourself, you're probably better off mentally than worrying about what's happening down the road.
I think, Coach, to kind of piggyback off that, too, when a head coach is gone, like you said, you give the players, like Coach Snyder said, time to mourn, but coaches and players kind of put that on them. So how challenging is it for you as a coach and a coaching staff to kind of get the players back in a positive state of mind?
Well, players, it's here today, gone tomorrow, so to speak. Players are a little, how do you say, funny? you know, they take things differently than we do. You know, they got the media, they got this thing that, you know, they can look at that and all of a sudden they're happy again. So, you know, what you try to do is really just try to keep them present in the moment, keeping them looking at what we're doing now. And that's been my message all day, and I hope you guys understand where I'm going with this. That's been my message all day, is staying in the present and not trying to look ahead and not trying to figure out what we did in the past, but let's just take it one step at a time.
Donnie, how would you characterize Will's state of mind for all this?
You know, Herm, man, he's a professional. You know, when I talked to him the last couple of days, which I have, he's been upbeat the whole time. He really has. And if you know, everybody knows Herm. He's a great leader in a way that he's not going to show a lot of emotions to you. And he's always talked about that as when you're the captain of the ship, people rely on you to make decisions. And when you're standing up there, you got to be able to stand there, take it like a man, as we say. So I think I can only tell you what I think. I know he's in a good place. I do know that. The guy that I really think a little bit more is Ray. You know, those two go way back. How tough was that? When you're two buddies, you look at each other and say, hey, we got to make a decision. And you go each, because you've been knowing each other so long, you say, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. And that's how. So to answer the question, he's been taking it like a champ, like the captain that he is. He's always been respectful, a gentleman. You know, he's not going to say anything derogatory or bad about the program, and he always is going to be Herm.
Donnie, the Utah, very well coached team, and
Well coached,
they do
big, strong.
Yeah.
You know, you look at it last year, the way we had it. You know, we thought we had a pretty good half. They came back and they made a couple adjustments and knocked us off the ball. And it's like I said, what the question was earlier about what we have put on tape. You know, they're going to come out and be physical. That's just who they are. Now, they got skill at every position. The running back is really good, number 9, and number 80. You know what he can do. He can be a tight end. He can be a wideout. He can be whatever they want for him. And then they got the guys that come in and the jet sweep guys and the quarterback. You know, the quarterback's really good. And I think I might have mentioned this before we played Oklahoma State. I thought their quarterback was like this quarterback. I mean, that guys bring some of those intangibles to the table. And then offensive line, man, we're going to get double teamed. we're going to get double teamed. We'll see how we play technique.
You mentioned sort of their mismatch generators, 80, and just what they do with their tight ends. And so what did you take from last year's game in that way that might help you prepare?
Well, and you're talking about schemes a little bit. You know, you got to when you got guys that are that good, you in my mind, there's two ways of doing it. You can zone them and play over the top of them, or you can get up there and try to hammer them and press them. But understand some of those guys play too, and they understand how they've been played. So I think what you got to do, we got to show him different looks and the quarterback different looks, and stay over the top at times, and then sometimes come down there and press him and make him get off the line of scrimmage and have to try not to give him the vertical routes, make him have to go sideways to get in his routes. You guys good? I appreciate you guys.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.